unmute. Thank you, Dee, and it's lovely to be here, and I had exactly the same reaction in catching up with you, Dee, and found like I'd caught up with a kindred spirit. So we've been in touch for a while now, and thank you for opening up the opportunity to speak to this brilliant movement of community development practitioners literally around the world. I'm just looking down the side of the chat box there, and it's an amazing network that you have all put together. And it's, when you think about what community development is about, and you know, empowering local people in local places to create the future that they want and the world that they want. And so thank you for all the work that you do. I should introduce myself a little bit first. So I've had a very, very strange career. I wouldn't even call it a career. I heard David Suzuki speak when I was 14, and then when I got to uni, I wanted to do a David Suzuki course, but there wasn't one. So I did environmental engineering, which was really the only thing that was available at the time that was about ecological sustainability and looking after the planet. I finished that and worked in local government in the private sector for a few years. And then I magically connected with a company called Vox Bandicoot, which was in Northcote in Melbourne in Australia. I've seen at least one nod there, which usually happens. Frank Ryan set up Vox Bandicoot in 1988, and they were doing environmental theatre in primary schools before the Rio Earth Summit about climate change and waste and consumption and biodiversity. And I caught up with him in 2002, and we developed a program together called the Sustainability Street Approach. And it was about bringing communities together in their own neighbourhood to build relationships, to build community around with sustainable living as, you know, the reason for coming together. And Frank had always been in environmental education and was a guru in environmental ed, but we brought in a whole lot of community development experts to help us develop that program. So there was a beautiful community development person in Northcote called Katie Kine, who spent a lot of time with us. And she was magnificent. And so we worked with 300 communities across the eastern seaboard of Melbourne in a 5-year period. And people came together and did all sorts of wonderful things, community projects. They reduced their environmental impact, and they changed who they were. So, you know, we were getting the state government saying to us, you know, how many tons of carbon per person per dog has been reduced in a 3-month period? And we were saying, well, it's about 30%, but this group have created a radio show, and this group have created a community garden, and this group have done verge planting, you know, 20 years before Costa did on Gardening Australia. And this group of, you know, they all did these wonderful community projects. And it's really interesting when I bump into people from that program now, because that while a lot of sustainability street communities mightn't be coming together anymore, every single person who was involved had their life changed by the process. So it was really a wonderful working experience. You know, that idea of handing over control to communities and you know, budding out and allowing them to emerge and create what they would love to create. So that was really foundational for me. We had kids and ran away from Melbourne to the country in Bendigo in central Victoria, and I set up my own business, and I was working with large corporates and with all levels of government and communities and schools on sustainable living, environmental education, facilitating, speaking, emceeing my way around the country. And then in about 2015, it just, a whole number of ideas came together for me. You know, in my work in sustainability, I was realizing that sustainability is not enough. You know, it's not enough to just recycle less. We have all these interconnected problems that are all civilizational. We have exponential growth in billionaires, exponential growth in homeless people. We've lost an entire section of the workforce in the last 30 years, and those people are now on social media, which has been really good for them. We have ecological issues that 20 years ago, I was running workshops saying if we do this and this, it's going to be okay. We can't say that anymore. We have massive structural economic issues where, I think during the pandemic, the billions or trillions of dollars that's gone to 5 white men at the head of tech companies is astounding. So in about 2015, I was like, okay, we can't work on these things in isolation. They're actually the same problem and have the same root cause. Globally, they're massive issues, but locally, it's actually just about economic development, and it's about community development, and it's about looking after local place. That's something that we've had as a species for millennia, that idea of caring for local place and community around us. So a bunch of us got together and said, well, let's create a model. We can create an economy that's about accessing the stuff that we need locally, and we can create community around that local economy, and it can be good for local people and create meaningful local work, and it can be about looking after local place. So we set up bHive Cooperative. Now, the idea with bHive is that it's just for Bendigo, what we're doing. What we're looking for is people and communities in other places around the world who want to just have the model and set up the same model or a similar model. It'll be different in every place. Every community is different. But we're looking for organisations and people to help us spread the model. We don't want to own it. We don't want to create a global behemoth. We want to create something that is like a bush or a tree, that scales the way nature scales. A bush will grow to a certain size. It'll throw out seeds, and new plants will grow. So what we're doing is creating a model that we hope other people and communities can just have and put in place in their own local community. So that's enough about me. I'm going to run you through a little, a few slides that will show you what bHive is and what it does, and then we'll get stuck into the conversation. So can people see? People can see that screen? Yep. I'm going to move it over like that. So, okay. So bHive, what we said was we wanted to create something that's about local people, local place, and local economy. This is a photo that isn't working. That's about our community at one of our events. What we've said is that it's time for people to reconnect with each other. We need to be able to find what we need fast in our own local neighbourhood. We're saying to people, find your tribe around you. And we're talking about a digital platform that is developed in a very, very different way, where the people own the platform. And I'll get to that a little bit more later. We've got a brilliant team of people locally who've put bHive together and done a lot of hard work despite all the odds. Where our model is so different that the venture capitalists don't like us, the social impact people don't like us, the not-for-profit sector doesn't like us, governments don't understand us, and the cooperative sector, who should be helping us, are asleep at the wheel because they're all 100 years old. So we have been up against it since we started. I did go to Sydney and yell at the cooperative sector last year and tried to put a firecracker under them, but they just groaned and went back to sleep. So hopefully they're coming. But we've had a very supportive local community. What our vision is that we own our local online sharing economy together. And we're developing a platform that enables communities to do just that. But if you have a look at our purpose down there, it's quite big and broad. So we want to create an epidemic of belonging. And there was one person on our board saying, I don't really 2 years ago, they were saying, I don't really understand what an epidemic means. And they came to me after the pandemic and said, okay, I get it now. I really get it now. So we want to help people in Bendigo locally to build their own local sharing enterprises. And we've seen those right around the world. It could be tool libraries, and it could be libraries of things, and it could be car sharing, or it could be carpooling, or it could be local energy cooperatives, or whatever. We want to create meaningful local work for people. We want spending to be localised. So you would have seen the studies on the Totnes pound and the local currencies. They actually go through 9 people compared to a national currency. So they help 9 families instead of 1 when you spend $1. And what we want is the spending that we have in Bendigo to circulate around Bendigo and through the other co-ops. We want it to be locally owned, cooperatively owned. We want to control our online footprint and future, which is incredibly important. And it's about creating community wealth or common wealth. So that's our purpose. Our Villages platform we launched at the start of the pandemic, and that was fun because people weren't allowed to talk to each other and go outside. So we've now written 4 community engagement plans and haven't been able to deliver any of them, which I'm sure you can all relate to. But with the Villages platform, you can see around the screen here, there's different things that you can do. You can set up a sharing library for stuff and skills. So you could put up and say, I'm a horticulturalist and I can help you prune your fruit trees, or I've got a wheelbarrow, or whatever. You can set up communities that people join across your city, communities of interest. That could be who's interested in setting up a library of things, or it could be, like I said before, it could be let's talk about fruit tree pruning, or let's talk about chickens or eggs, or whatever we want to do in our local economy. Can we set up a solar farm as a community? You can create posts. You can create your own community. You can privately chat with anyone who's in your network. You can plan things together. We've got a tool called Let's Collaborate, which is like an online discussion and decision-making tool. So you could use that for something really simple, like, what do we want to do as a street? Or you could use it as a committee to make decisions together online. You've got your own village. Everyone on the platform has their own village. That is people that they add to their network who live around them. So you're in charge of your own online community that is based around your house. And you can create events as well. So that's kind of the Villages platform in brief. When you sign up, the first page looks like this. You add in your address and it shows you what's happening around your house. So that's a map that shows my house. It doesn't, of course, show where anyone else lives because that would be a massive breach of privacy. But it helps you to find people that live within a walkable distance of your house. So, there's that idea of the 10-minute neighborhood where we can go and hang out and connect with others that live around us. So that's the elements of Villages. You can set up communities of interest as well across town. As I said, they can be about all sorts of things. That's totally up to you. I'm happy to share this slideshow with people. I'd just rather get to turning the slideshow off and talking to you all. But yeah, you have your own village. You can create lots of communities. Then around villages, that's where we help create this local network of co-ops that can run our local community. So your identity and your reputation in villages can be used to access local cooperative services. And you can set those up, or you can access them, or you could work in them. But the idea is that they're all local and they're all cooperatively owned. So we're setting up a car sharing co-op first in Bendigo. We're close to financing that, which is great. What we worked out was we live in Bendigo in Australia. It's in the country. We have 115,000 people who live here. But we spend $2.5 billion a year on goods and services just in little Bendigo. So you just think about all of that money leaving town, all of that money then leaving the country and going into shareholder bank accounts, which then go out of circulation, as we know. So you just think about we've got people who are starving because they haven't had a job for 2 years in a pandemic. Imagine if we had a network of co-ops who are providing work, looking after their members and providing local services that people could access. But that even a tiny bit of that 2.5 billion circulating around our economy would have strengthened so many lives in the last 2 years. So what we want to do is have our spending and our work circulating around in Bendigo. One of our heroes when we were setting up was Janelle Orsi. She wrote one of the first books on the sharing economy. She's a lawyer in the US, and she does cartoons for all her presentations. And I love this one. We just need to stop feeding the billionaires. We need to look after local people in local place. So we're a co-op. I said the co-op sector is asleep. It's the perfect business model for the new economy. Collective shared governance, one member, one vote, exists to benefit its members, not to extract value from its members, and hyper-local. When we started, there's this global movement. It's a tongue twister, platform cooperativism. But there's people talking about this. What if the drivers owned Uber? It's a totally different business model. It's not precarious work anymore. It's not bringing your own car and your own time and not paying your own and having to pay your own taxes and having to pay your own work cover and being at the whim of people on an app. You are an owner. You know, you bring value to the business and you own that value. So that's what made it click for us. And this is Janelle Orsi here. She was saying cooperatives will change the economy, and we need to bring them back. We're obviously developing an online platform, so it's really important that people own their own data. People own their own reputation. People own their own identity. It's not something that can be bought and sold. No one's being advertised at. It's yours. That's yours. And there's huge value in that. In some ways, creating something like that that's around trust is a linchpin of this next century's economy. Now, I mentioned what we're facing, the politics of fear, social isolation, depression, anxiety, economic stagnation. You know, there's going to be more plastic than fish in the ocean soon because of our consumption patterns. The idea of a job is quite industrial revolution in its makeup. We need to change the nature of work. We need to get rid of inequality. We've lost half of all wildlife from the planet since 1970, and we need to restore biodiversity starting in every local place. Consumption, like hyper-consumption, is at insane levels now. We've got exponential growth in all sorts of resources that are finite. And we have a straight line linear economy that's about digging stuff up and throwing it in landfill, and we use it a little bit in the middle. And we're still heading for 6 degrees of global warming despite 26 global climate talks. I've just included Scotland there because we all know what is going to happen as we come out of Scotland. Now, another inspiration for us is Janine Benyus, who wrote the book Biomimicry. And she was talking to a forest ecologist in Canada called Simone Simard. And she's been studying the transfer of nutrients and atoms and water and energy between plants in forests in Canada. And what she's actually discovered is that the trees on top of a hill are collecting sunlight, and they're passing that through the mycorrhizal, the fungal layer in the soil, to the trees at the bottom of the valley that don't get sunlight. The trees at the bottom of the valley are collecting water, and they're sending it the other way to the trees up the top. What they're finding is that plants in a forest are exchanging nutrients, carbon, nitrogen. They're exchanging information. When a wood borer comes into a tree and drills a hole, the tree releases a chemical that travels through the forest and alerts the other trees to put up their chemical defenses. Forests are collaborating. They are cooperating. There is competition within that. But this idea of survival of the fittest, Charles Darwin actually only mentioned it once in his book about evolution, and it was, and he was talking about how it was not the case. But we need to create communities that are deeply rooted in place, like a forest, and that are about exchange of goods and services for the benefit of all. And we can totally create that. Rooted in place, about cooperation, local materials, zero waste, shared ideas, right across the economy. So we're talking about now, how can we help other places set up the same model that we've been establishing? So, you think about your own place, could you set up your own? And then when we've got a network of bHive cooperatives, we can just be sharing the tech. If we set up car sharing in Bendigo, we can just give it to other places and they can set it up in that place. It changes the nature of collaboration and cooperation totally, and the nature of scale. Build the tech once, use it lots of times. So what we want is this connection. We've now had $42,000 donated to us by our local community to get going. They're our founding patrons and we love them, and we will always love them. With a cooperative, it's a different funding model. It's hard to raise capital in the beginning as a co-op, especially with a tech co-op. But once a co-op is going, it's a more stable business model and a family business over the long term. So once you get going, you're off, and then you can help others, which is one of the principles of co-ops globally. So I'm going to stop sharing there. We launched our platform in November 2021, and fair to say it's been hard work over the last little while. So we're now gearing up to do a big launch in February, when hopefully relaunch in February, when hopefully we are vaccinated and out the other end and able to go outside and talk to people again, and we're ready for new things in our lives. Our car sharing co-op is on the way, and one of the reasons I was talking to Dee was about this was, we're now talking to 12 local governments around Australia who have got in touch with us and said, look, we'd love to help this happen in our local place. And I said to Dee, well, we're not going to be able to do this by ourselves, and we don't want to. We want this to be something that is shared and available to people everywhere. So I just said to Dee, well, well, it was your idea, wasn't it, Dee? Let's have a presentation and let's have a talk about how the community development network might be able to be involved or use the bHive model to get going, because the next 10 years are fairly crucial from an economic point of view, from a social point of view, from an ecological point of view. And as someone who was part of a theatre company that was talking about the impacts of climate change on pandemics in 1991, and here we are. We've got the pandemic, we've got the floods, we've got the bushfires, we've got the social breakdown that's happening, and we've got this economic model that is about creating riches for 5 people when we totally have the ability to create wealth for everyone. So that's probably it's hard to do a really brief overview, but that's probably a really brief overview, and I can delve deeper into different parts of it, but I'm happy to open up and have a conversation about what you all think and where we could take it next as a group.
Thanks, Ian. I'll just pause or stop the recording.